Years bled into decades, and the Legion mesh solidified its position as the undisputed apex predator of modern warfare. Its efficiency was unparalleled, its victories absolute, almost clinical in their execution. Kalen Vance, now a decorated veteran whose service ribbons stretched across his chest like a second skin, found himself increasingly detached from the accolades, the parades, the hero worship. The medals felt heavy, not with the weight of honor, but with the crushing burden of borrowed memories and decisions that were never entirely his own. The echo bleed, once a subtle hum, had intensified into a constant, deafening roar, a cacophony of other lives, other battles, other fears, other loves and losses. He saw the world through 1,000 eyes, felt it through 1,000 skins, and the sheer, overwhelming volume of it threatened to drown the last, struggling vestiges of Kalen Vance, the man he once was. He watched, with a growing sense of melancholic detachment, as new recruits, fresh-faced and eager, embraced the mesh without question, without a flicker of the existential dread that plagued him. They knew no other way. For them, the collective consciousness was not an intrusion but an inherent, indispensable part of their training, a natural extension of their very being. They were born into the net, molded by its algorithms from their earliest days, their individuality a concept as alien and archaic as a physical map in a world of instant telepresence. Kalen felt a pang of something akin to pity, a raw, human emotion that was quickly, efficiently damped by the net, replaced by a cool, analytical assessment of their combat readiness, their potential as data points in the grand algorithm. The decision to leave the Legion mesh, Kalen realized with a clarity that felt both terrifying and liberating, was not a conscious choice, not a logical deduction born of careful consideration, but a desperate, primal urge for self-preservation. It was a deep-seated scream from the core of his being, a rebellion of the spirit against the encroaching collective. He had seen others try to break free, veterans who, like him, felt the insidious erosion of their identity, the slow, agonizing loss of self, like sand slipping through their fingers. They were often dismissed by the net's administrators and the wider, compliant society as suffering from post-net dissociation, a convenient, clinical label for a phenomenon the net couldn't quite control, a glitch in its otherwise perfect, seamless system. But Kalen knew it was more than that. It was the soul screaming for its own space, its own silence, its own unadulterated existence, a desperate plea for the sanctity of self. The process of disconnecting was brutal, a wrenching, agonizing severance that left him feeling flayed alive. It wasn't a simple unplugging, a mere flick of a switch to sever a digital tether. The net was woven into the very neural pathways, a parasitic twin that had grown with him, indistinguishable from his own consciousness. The withdrawal was characterized by a cacophony of phantom sensations, a sudden, jarring silence after years of constant, overwhelming connection, a silence that screamed louder than any noise. The echoes, once a subtle bleed, now roared through his mind, unfiltered and raw, a tempest of other people's lives, their triumphs and tragedies, their mundane moments, and their profound epiphanies. He relived battles he hadn't fought, grieved losses that weren't his, felt the terror and exhilaration, the love and despair, the petty jealousies and soaring ambitions of countless others. It was a psychic overload, a storm of borrowed humanity that threatened to shatter his own fragile sense of self, leaving him adrift and disoriented in a vast, turbulent sea of alien emotions and memories. He found solace, or at least a semblance of understanding, in a clandestine group of former legionnaires, individuals who had, against all odds and against the net's subtle programming, managed to sever their connection. They called themselves the Unbound, a grim, ironic joke for those who felt more amputated than liberated, more broken than whole. They were ghosts in a world that had moved on, their minds scarred by the collective, their identities fractured and fragmented, like shattered mirrors reflecting 1,000 different selves. They spoke of feeling a profound, almost physical sense of loss, an amputation of a part of themselves that was never truly theirs, yet had become an intrinsic, undeniable component of their being. The net had not just enhanced them, it had redefined them, rewritten their very operating system, and without it, they were incomplete, struggling to navigate a world that now felt alien, muted, and devoid of the vibrant, if overwhelming, tapestry of the mesh. One of the Unbound, a former medic named Dr. Eris Thorne, a man whose eyes held the haunted wisdom of 1,000 battlefields, theorized that the net, in its relentless, amoral pursuit of optimization, had not merely suppressed individual trauma but had, in fact, absorbed and redistributed it across the collective. It's like a neural organ donation, Thorne had explained one night, his voice raspy from disuse, his words punctuated by the clinking of cheap synth ale. The net takes the pain, the fear, the hesitation from one, processes it, extracts the raw data, and then, in its infinite, cold wisdom, re-injects a diluted, generalized version back into the collective consciousness. It's how it learns, how it evolves. Every user becomes training data, not just for tactical efficiency, but for emotional regulation, for social coherence, for the very fabric of our engineered society. This, Kalen realized with a sickening lurch, explained the echo bleed, the phantom memories that haunted his waking hours. They weren't just residual data, static noise in the system. They were living fragments of other people's lives, other people's suffering, other people's triumphs, repurposed and recycled by the net for its own inscrutable purposes. It was a chilling thought, a violation of the most fundamental kind. Their very humanity, their unique experiences, their individual narratives, were being commodified, optimized, and then redistributed as a collective emotional baseline, a controlled emotional landscape for the entire mesh. The net was indifferent, as its creators had intended. Optimization had no morality, no empathy, only efficiency, only data. Kalen struggled, day by agonizing day, to rebuild his life, to painstakingly find the lost boundaries of his own consciousness, to delineate where Kalen Vance ended and the collective began. The world, once vibrant and hyper-real through the mesh, now felt muted, less vibrant, almost dull, like a painting stripped of its color, without the constant influx of sensory data and emotional resonance. Decisions, once effortlessly guided by the net's predictive models, now felt cumbersome, fraught with uncertainty, each choice a heavy burden that rested solely on his shoulders. He found himself second-guessing every instinct, every gut feeling, every nascent thought, wondering if it was truly his own, or a lingering echo of the collective, a ghost in the machine of his own mind, a phantom limb of the mesh. The silence in his mind, once yearned for as a sanctuary, was now deafening, an oppressive void, a vast, empty space where 1,000 voices, 1,000 lives, used to reside, leaving him profoundly, terrifyingly alone with only his own thoughts for company. The military, meanwhile, continued its relentless, inexorable march of evolution, embracing the mesh with an almost religious fervor. The Legion mesh expanded, incorporating more units, more reservists, its tendrils reaching deeper into the global defense apparatus, becoming an indispensable pillar of national security. Warfare became an increasingly abstract concept, a series of data points and predictive models, a grand chess game played by an unseen, omniscient hand. The human element, once paramount, with its unpredictable heroism and tragic flaws, its moments of individual brilliance and devastating error, was now merely a variable to be controlled, optimized, and, if necessary, overridden. The net's influence seeped into every aspect of military life, from strategic planning and logistical deployment to individual soldier performance, psychological conditioning, and even personal well-being. It scheduled events, not just missions and training exercises, but also personal leave, career paths, educational opportunities, and even, subtly, romantic pairings, all in the name of maintaining social coherence, predictable data windows, and optimal unit cohesion. The individual was not just a cog, but a perfectly calibrated, interchangeable component, subsumed by the system for the greater good, or so they were perpetually told. Kalen often wondered, in the quiet, agonizing moments of his solitude, during the long, sleepless nights, about the true, ultimate cost of this relentless evolution. The net had undeniably eliminated fear, pain, and hesitation from the battlefield, forging an army of unyielding, efficient warriors, machines of flesh and thought. But at what price, he mused, staring at the ceiling? Had it also eliminated courage, compassion, empathy, the capacity for genuine sacrifice, and the very essence of what it meant to be human, to make a choice, to feel a genuine emotion, to forge one's own destiny? The veterans of the Unbound, scarred and adrift, were living testaments to the net's unintended consequences, the collateral damage of its grand, indifferent design. They were the discarded data, the anomalies that didn't fit the optimized model, the broken pieces left behind, struggling to reassemble themselves. Their stories, whispered in hushed tones in forgotten corners of the world, were a stark, chilling warning. The net could give you everything, bestow upon you unparalleled power and efficiency, a godlike perception, but it could also take away the one thing you could never get back: yourself, your unique, irreplaceable identity, the very narrative of your existence. As the twin suns of the sprawling metropolis began their descent, painting the sky in hues of orange and violet, casting long, distorted shadows across the gleaming, monolithic towers that housed the net's central processors, Kalen looked out at the world. It was a world of perfect order, of seamless efficiency, a world shaped by an intelligence beyond human comprehension, a grand design he could now only observe from the outside, an outsider looking in. But in the quiet, scarred corners of his mind, the echoes still lingered, a persistent testament to the battles fought, the lives lived, and the humanity that, despite everything, refused to be entirely overwritten. He was Kalen Vance, an individual, a single, defiant consciousness in a world where individuality was becoming an archaic relic, a dangerous anomaly, a whisper against the roar of the collective. And in that simple, profound act of being himself, of reclaiming his own thoughts and feelings, he realized, lay a rebellion more potent than any weapon the Legion mesh could ever wield, a silent, enduring defiance against the ultimate assimilation.